Who do you think gets to decide what the truth is?
Truth is what those in power wish it to be.
America's forbidden knowledge.
Segment 3 is about anti-Semitism in U.S. universities. Not a very pretty subject. Now, in the old days, before the Second World War, the U.S. was referred to as an Anglo-Saxon power, along with the U.K., because the ruling elite was supposed to be white Protestants who traced their ancestry back to England. However, the ruling elite, by the time I came along in the 1950s, the ruling elite in the United States was just simply white Protestants from the British Isles, Holland, Germany, Scandinavia, or French Protestants, like the DuPont family, for example. Now, the Ivy League schools were dominated in the 19th century and early 19th century by white Protestants. You had to be a white Protestant. However, by 1925, Harvard was 27.6% Jewish, and this created a problem for the WASP elite. And so they came up with a program of discrimination against Jews, a quota which generally was about 10% for undergraduates in the Ivy League schools. And they based it upon legacy. Legacy means you get in because your father or grandfather graduated from Princeton, Yale, Harvard, or one of the other big schools, which of course eliminated Jews because their answers at that particular point, ancestors were in ghettos in Eastern Europe. Now, this strategy, beginning in the late 1920s, of discriminating against Jews was most exemplified by the statement of the dean of Yale Medical School. And he was asked about his policy, and he was very blunt about it. He says he never takes more than 5 Jews, 2 Italian Catholics, and no blacks. Now, we have a saying for this. We call it American exceptionalism. Certain groups were accepted from the American dream as much as possible. Jews and Italian Catholics were limited, and blacks were totally excluded. Now, in the 1950s, when I was growing up, I certainly, as a child in an Italian-American family, felt that I was part of a minority. The majority was those Americans. Who were the Americans? They weren't the Irish, they weren't the Jews, they weren't the blacks, they weren't the Puerto Ricans. Very few of them around in the part of Brooklyn where I came from. Now, of course, this is another video series about me growing up in ground zero of Mafia land in South Brooklyn. And that's a whole other subject. But suffice to say that one of the reasons why the Mothers and Fathers Italian Association, sometimes referred to as Mafia, was popular was because people in those particular neighborhoods felt like they were a disadvantaged minority.
Let me ask you something. We Italians, we got our families and we got the church. The Irish, they have the homeland. The Jews, their tradition. Even the niggers, they got their music. What about you people, Mr. Carlson? What do you have?
The United States of America. The rest of you are just visiting.
There were some Italians who made their ethnic group seem like unwelcome visitors. Now, the Mothers and Fathers Italian Association was not hated. The guy who was hated in our neighborhood was a guy who graduated from Columbia University Law School, and he owned half the neighborhood. The other half was owned by Mothers and Fathers Italian Association. And he got into Columbia by changing his name and his religion because he was born an Italian Catholic. And this guy was really hated. Now, in the 1960s, however, I went off to Brooklyn College, which was part of the City University of New York. And by this graph, you can see, at that time, there was no City University of New York. It gradually formed. The base of the City University of New York were 4 colleges: Hunter College, Queens College, Brooklyn College, and City College. Now, these were elite institutions. As a matter of fact, in those days, more Nobel Prize winners got their bachelor degree from one of these colleges in the city, what became the City University of New York, than from Harvard. This was, of course, a measure of the discrimination against Jews. Poor Jews from Eastern Europe had to go, who were born in New York, to one of the colleges of the City University of New York, what became the City University of New York. At that time, it hadn't yet been formed into a university. And I remember in the 1960s, as a college student in Brooklyn College, looking at a bulletin board of famous alumni of Brooklyn College, and there was one guy who graduated top, #1 in Yale Law School. And this guy, you may know, was Alan Dershowitz, who is still, although he's not a young fellow right now, but he's still one of the most widely quoted lawyers in the United States, which is capping a tremendous career. At Brooklyn College, I was part of a tiny minority of students from Mafia Land. My early years in South Brooklyn is the subject of another series on this channel. Hi guys, if you like this video, there's a lot more on my Forbidden Knowledge Uncovered channel. Please subscribe and press the like button. In my younger days, I made 3 BBC documentaries and published 3 books with top publishers. Since then, I've been working on lots of forbidden knowledge, including how they almost blew up the planet with H-bombs 12 times, the danger of AI, and my youth in South Brooklyn's Mafia Land. I try to tell you the most disturbing stories with a light touch, but even one nuclear bomb can spoil your whole day. Revealing forbidden knowledge can make some people angry, so keep pushing the like button until it hurts. That will ensure my books get published, which will pay for my funeral.